Today I'm going to start making a glue-up table for making end-grain cutting boards that have lots of pieces like this one that's on the floor here, all these pieces for this optical illusion cutting board. I've taken out my table insert on the table saw and the regular blade and replaced it with a dado blade that I think should be the right width. And I've got this wooden insert that will, as we start to saw later and raise the blade, we'll get that cut through. Anyway, the glue-up table is going to consist of this piece of countertop that I bought at a store. It was like $26. It's 4 feet long. It's 2 feet wide. Has the backing here. And I don't really want this backing, so one of the first things I'm going to do is cut this off. I'll use painter's blue tape to minimize chip out. And what I'm going to use, this I should give credit to Ryan Hawkins. He's a YouTuber, makes cutting boards. He doesn't have plans for the glue-up table that I'm going to be making, but I pretty much copied what I've seen in his videos. He uses these T-tracks, and you'll see as I get going in this how it's made. It's got a few knobs that hold the track. So I've got to cut some dado slots in the hard laminate here to put this in. I'll have to cut this in two, and then on top of these pieces of wood that were just left over from another project that I had, I will screw in some 1.5 inch PVC pipe that's on the floor here, you can see. And that will be the surface that the board's set on as they're being glued up. It will all make sense once you see it come together here. But we're going to get started. So I've got to cut this backing off on the tabletop first, and then we'll do one thing at a time and get going. What I'm going to do now is cut the piece, this channel, into two pieces. It's 4 feet long, so I've marked the center. I'm going to use a hacksaw and cut it into two 2-foot lengths, and the 10-foot long 1.5 inch PVC I'm going to cut into two 5-foot lengths. So I've marked it'll be in the middle of these dash lines. I guess I'm going to have to work on my video recording skills. I managed to get a bunch of video of me walking around the shop getting ready to do things. Before and after I used a circular saw to cut the backing of the countertop off. It did go pretty smooth except for this one little piece of chip out right here. Other than that, you can see it's nice and straight, smooth. This will be a good glue up surface for glue dropping when we make our glue up table. So like I said, we're ready to do the hacksawing of the T-channel and the PVC. I'll do that right now. I'm getting ready to cut the dados into the laminate top, and I put painter's blue tape down 1 foot from the edge in on each edge of the top. Once I have the groove in here, I'll take the tape off, put the T-slots in and glue them, screw them in place, and we'll be ready for the next step. But before I make the dados in the top, I'm going to make a practice dado check it for width and depth and a piece of scrap wood, and we'll set up and do that right now. first crack this dado, and you can see it's a great looking dado, but it's way too narrow for this to fit in. So I've added more cutters, and we'll start the saw, bring it up, and recut the dado and see how we did for width. I have adjusted the width of the cutters on the dado set. I believe I have the right width. We're going to try it now. Once we have the width set correctly, we will then set the depth so that we have this flush with the table. So we'll see how that works. The width of our channel is 0.745, depends. The width of this is 0.71. So we need about 30,000. So I don't have any shims that came with the dado set, but I can make some. We'll adjust with some shims and make another run in a minute. I've made a couple of attempts at making dados. The first one was this real narrow one here. Second one was a little wider. Excuse me. The third one, in this scrap piece of wood, was not only the right width, as you can see that there's no wiggle room there, maybe a half a mil or a mil for glue, and the depth is just what I want. So now I just have to put the piece of countertop on the saw, cut out the two grooves, and hope the board doesn't break in two on those, making it less stable. Let's see. All right, we are finally ready to make our cuts for the channels. We've got painter's blue tape here, and I've set the fence so it's about 12 inches from the fence to the center where I want the grooves. So we'll see if this works. And I'll flip this over. Take it nice and slow. Keep the fence. We got a fence locked in. We'll keep the tabletop against it and hope for good luck. Here we go. Wait for the saw blade to stop. Flip it over and take a look, see what we did. Here we go. Try the first channel in here before we mess up the next one. And that looks like success to me. That looks good. So we'll do the next one. In this cut, I realized the tabletop was slightly away from the fence, so this groove may look a little cattywampus, but we'll see here. Flip it over. When I said I hope the table is stable, what I meant to say earlier is rigid. I hope it's still rigid enough for this to work, not fall apart. So that's a little snug, but I can fix that with a chisel probably. So that should be good. I've done a couple of things here, getting ready for the next step. I've laid out, you can see it, an ellipse here. There's going to be four of them on these, total of four of them on these two boards. And I'll go drill a hole on each end and then use my jigsaw and cut out the remainder. I will then put them in this position, and using one of these T screw things, we'll put it in here, we'll drill a hole down here, a through hole, and then with this knob we'll be able to secure this piece to the tabletop. Now, for securing the aluminum extruded slot material here to the tabletop, I'm primarily going to use this Loctite seal stuff, but I wanted to also have a couple of screws, one on each end, and most screws are just too long, and I did check that once I put the T-bolt in here, it'll fit past this screw that's in there. So what I had to do was I put screws in a vice grip and ground them so that, if you can see that, the screw is not going to be all the way to the bottom of the particle board countertop once it's put in. So I ground those down on my grinder. Everything in my shop here is makeshift. I've got a limited amount of space, so I make do with what I have. And I know people will say, oh, you got a lot of tools here. And I do, but I don't have as much space as I'd like to have for maneuvering around. But the next step is to drill out these holes, cut them out with jigsaw. We'll do that next. I'm now ready to drill a total of 8 holes. And what I've got is a 1-inch Forstner bit in here. And I've got a backer board, so when I drill, I won't break through and make a mess on this board. So this isn't critical, but we'll get it close to the line. Ready to glue in the channels. See if this works like it's supposed to. And I like to stick a screw in it so I can reuse it. See if I can do that. And before I glue sets up, let's put it in place. This one in place. That's good. Now for the 4 screws. First one didn't go in like I wanted, so I'm going to do a little pilot hole. See if this goes better with a little pilot hole. Perfect. I'm now ready to use the jigsaw and cut out this racetrack starting in the holes that I made earlier. And the main thing is I wanted to try to make this surface here, which is going to be the bottom once it's installed on the table, as flat as possible. So there you have it. One is done. We'll do the other three, sand them up, and we'll be done. You can see I have jigsawed out all 4 of the racetrack holes. And I've got the aluminum extruded piece glued and screwed into the laminate tabletop. We're going to let that glue dry for at least 24 hours. And then once we do the next assembly, what it's going to be is this. We're going to drill holes here and here, 4 places total. And then we will put the, get it here. We will attach the PVC to the top of the pieces of wood. And with these in place, as you'll see once we're finished, these will go into holes that I'm going to drill here. I can then slide these pieces back and forth to whatever position I need that makes the most sense for gluing up pieces of wood for cutting boards. So we're making progress, going to wait 24 hours and then we will continue. I'm ready to drill a small hole in each of these slots for the T-bolt to go through to mount this piece to the tabletop. So we'll drill these holes next. With the holes drilled, we're now ready to assemble the 2 pieces. And put on the knobs, tighten them down when we're ready here. So after this, there's only going to be about one more step. So we can move these back and forth depending on the width of the pieces we're gluing up. So we just snug them down. And that will give us access to the clamps all the way around the table when we're gluing up. So the last step is to glue is to screw on, measure where these 2 5-foot long, 1.5 inch PVC pieces go on. And we'll measure where we want to put those on, drill some holes, screw them on, and this table will be ready to use. I'm going to use 4 of these like 1.25 inch drywall screws, and I'm going to use 4 of them, one at about 1 inch from each end, and then another one here and one here. And what I've done is I've drilled a hole through the PVC here where I want them, and then I just laid the PVC right next to this piece of wood, transferred a mark that's right in line, so that when I go to put the screws in, using can't use a driver, I'll have to use a screwdriver. I'll just have a clearance hole here for the head to go through, and I've got the right size drill ready to drill these holes in here, and I'll do that right now. All right, I've just finished drilling 4 little holes here, and when I go to put the screw in, it's going to have enough, it's small enough that it'll be able to, once the screw is screwed in, it'll grip it. And I've got holes on one side of the PVC that's a clearance hole, so that screw will be in that, it'll be in the other way around, it'll be coming through. And so I need to have the hole on this side be a clearance hole for the screw to go through and for the head to be all the way in so I can get my screwdriver in. So I'm going to drill a big enough hole. And I got the drill bit here. I think you can see this, that once I drill that size hole that I've got on the drill bit, that'll give me a clearance hole to assemble the screws. We'll get those bigger holes drilled right now. And to make this easier for drilling these clearance holes, what I've done is put the PVC into the miter gauge slot. That way the PVC isn't going to move when I go to drill these holes. So let's see how that works. So we will see if this works. Flip it back around. I need a magnetic screwdriver to hold this on while I get it fished through the hole here. So I don't have a magnetic screwdriver, but I'll do the next best thing, which is I use a piece of tape. I used Scotch tape on the first one, and we'll just use some masking tape here on this one. See if we can get this started and show you how I do it. We're going to get all four started before we put them in, just to get them started. Hopefully this will get in the hole. There it is. That's in the hole. And so we just hold it from this side and pull the screwdriver out. Set it there and we'll do the other two. And we'll do the next one here. We'll put the tape on the screw and screwdriver. And we should be able to screw them all down. Well, I've managed to get all four screws down, screwed snugly. I've snugged down these knobs, and the first one is in place. I'm going to do the second one the same way, and this table will be done. There it is, finished, assembled, ready to use. Everything seems nice and sturdy. And again, I just wanted to say thanks to Ryan Hawkins for his YouTube videos, where I saw his version of this that I've copied. And just to give you an idea of how this is going to work, and there'll be future videos of this. So when I make a cutting board and I've got multiple strips, I'll lay them out on here, and these are going to be the surfaces that get glued together. And so I'll flip them and then put glue on all these surfaces, flip them over, clamp them up, and the whole purpose of this table is to get a really convenient way of clamping multiple strips of wood together to get the clamps on quickly and in place with the other pieces that you need to use culls and end pieces to not put the clamps against the very end of the cutting boards, to disfigure them. If you have suggestions on what I could do better, if I'm going to make another one in the future, if you make one similar, let me know, drop it in the comments. Always happy to learn from others, and I hope you've enjoyed this. If you learned something, feel free to give it a thumbs up and subscribe. There's going to be more videos coming out of making the cutting boards. So I appreciate you watching this far, and more to come. I was all set to use my glue up table to glue up my first cutting board pieces here on the floor. But then I noticed, well, the first problem was I had an uneven, this is the bottom of it. This piece here was 3/4 of an inch thicker, and I didn't have anything over here. But the reason I glued and screwed on these two backer boards, I don't know how well it's going to show up here, but there is like a hairline crack here in the back of the particle board, and it even went into this piece here, right there, if you can see. I don't know how well that'll show up, but I didn't want to take a chance on this thing breaking in two after all the work I put into it. So it wasn't much more work to just plane down two pieces of wood to the same thickness as this. I glued and screwed them on like I said. I'll give this a day or two to dry, and then I'll be able to start gluing up. So that's an update on the glue top table. First modification.